Hey, let's be careful out there.
So hey guys, welcome to the next video in my series, and in this one I want to talk about craft knives. It's something that is, I think, one of the most important tools for any modeler. It's a very versatile tool, but it's something that's overlooked as well. So let's have a little look. So hey guys, right, craft knives. So as you see, I've got my cutting mat down. That's kind of part of craft knives. You don't want to cut your surface. Now you see here I've got two kinds of craft knife. I believe that there are essentially three kinds of knives. The first one, I don't own one, so I'm going to bring it up on the screen. Now, oops, sorry guys, I just brought the wrong thing up. Right, so this is the first kind that you can see. Now you can buy really expensive ones of these. You can buy really cheap ones from the dollar stores and the pound stores, and they are very good. What it is, it's got a retractable blade, and if you look closely, it's got little scores along the blade, so when it starts to get a little bit blunt, you can just snap the end off. Now I personally don't like those. I don't like the fact that there's a little stress point along the blade, so because it's a little bit weaker, it's designed to be weaker so you can snap it off, but it makes it a little bit too easy to snap off. So everything I'm going to tell you today is going to apply to that kind of blade, but I don't actually own one. So the two main kind of, I think the most common one that most people use is this one. If you ever hear the words Exacto Blade or Exacto knife, this is pretty much what you're getting. You will either have an Exacto knife or you will have a copy. Now this is a copy, and it works very, very simply. That you have a blade. It may also look something like this, but this is the same principle. So you have basically four components. You have your blade, and your blade will be common for any kind of blade. You have this little bit which is a holder, and the principle is that you slip the blade. You see that there's some slits in there, and what it does is, as you tighten it up, it nips that, so that instead of holding it, see there, it's held very loosely, but if I push it together, it stays, and that's what stops it from falling. This is the bit that tightens it onto the blade, and this little collar here will go up further than the base of the blade, and it will stop the blade from moving side to side. And the way that you load these up, ever so simple, is you have this loosened as loose as you want, so that this little slit there will open. You then place the end of the blade inside. I don't know if I've got that loose enough, and you see you slide that in as far as it goes. Now the next bit, a lot of people, sorry, did I catch any of that on the camera? I might have to do that again. Now I notice a lot of people, they hold the collar and they do it up. Now you'll notice that the collar's not actually attached to anything, so all that's going to happen, like you see how that blade is rotating, what you need to do, with the sharp bit facing away from you, take the blade from behind, hold it, and then do the handle up. Yeah, and then you see that's now nice and tight, even though this is a cheap old nasty blade. And once you've got it done up a certain amount, you can tighten it more. This bit being rubber, as you tighten it, it will squish it, and then as it gets squished, it pushes outwards. If you get something rubbery, you see this, I know this isn't the thing, but a piece of tape, as you push it, can you see how the sides come out? And it's the same principle with rubber. As you compress it, it gets wider. And the reason it rotates there is because it's actually working there. But usually if you find you can't get your blade in, that's your problem. So I'll do it again just in case I didn't get it on camera before. So we're going to be very carefully. It's always best to hold the blade about halfway down. If you hold it like that and you push, it could dig into your finger. Remember, these are extremely sharp. If they're not sharp, you probably shouldn't be using them. So pop that in as far down as it will go, and then holding so that the cutting edge is away from you, hold that end, and you see like if I'm holding the collar, the blade is just not tightening. So you hold it on the blade, you do. Once you've got a little bit of squidge in there, then you can finish it off really tight. But you've got to get that started by holding the blade, and then there you've got a nice cutting blade. Now the blade that I use more often than not, I first discovered this in Games Workshop. They sold these, but they're brown, and this is a little bit more of a safety knife. As you can see, this one, if I was to drop it and it landed on my foot, can you see what's going to happen? This one, it's got two positions that it locks into, or three. You've got this one which is completely closed. You've got this one in its working position, so I can now use it. And if I push it one more forwards, it's in the blade changing position. Now what makes this knife really, really good is actually heavier at the back than it is at the front. For me, that makes it a little bit more comfortable to use because it's trying to push into my hand rather than being equally balanced. Because I'll hold the knife slightly more than halfway down, it means it's more, the center of gravity gets pushed that way, and it's just much more comfortable. And the main thing is, because it's heavier on the back, if it drops, it's more inclined to go this way. Can you see it's got a rounded edge, so if I drop it on my hand, it's not doing any damage. It will hurt if it hits my foot, but it won't cut my hand. Right, so the next thing is the blades, and there's three main types of blade. So you've got this angled blade, and this is a very good knife for general use. I like to try and get a blade of about that angle, and what I find is when I'm working, I put my thumb onto position and then I'm cutting like that, so that if I should slip, this piece of the blade is going to push into my thumb. So can you see I'm not going to cut my thumb even though I'm working. People always say oh, cut away from you, but the truth is you don't get so much control. If you're shaving or you're sharpening a pencil, that's fine, but when you're carefully cutting, it's very hard, and most people I know will end up cutting towards them. So if I want to cut this wheel off, you see I'm going to cut towards myself. I'm going to use the heel, and you see I've got a nice cut through there. Now the next thing about cutting is the way that a knife works best is not on a cutting action, it's on a sawing action. So if I get a piece of card or a piece of something, right, so I have a piece, is a very thick piece of paper. If I push down, can you see it's trying to squash that piece of paper? Right, but if I do get it in, it's that, can you see it's trying, like, it's ripping it rather than cutting it. Now if I cut at an angle, can you see I get that nice straight cut. So ideally you want the blade about the actual cutting surface about 45 degrees to the actual item that you're cutting. So we'll do that again with something a bit smaller. So because I'm cutting, can you see that I'm getting that nice, this is a blunt blade as well, it doesn't help, but whereas if I push down, it just makes a mess. So always try to keep your angle. So if I was cutting through this, I'd be cutting at about that angle. Okay, so that's your main everyday usage blade. Now another blade which is going to go completely against what I've just said are these chisel blades, and you see that they're square and they've got the cutting edge on the end. Now these are very useful for softer materials, and maybe where you're a little bit restrained for space, but they work, and they do actually work. That's a daft one, isn't it? That's why I've got two blades, isn't it? Because it's too big for that other handle. Right, so I'm going to pop this in exactly the same way. Okay, now remember that if I hold the collar, it's just going to rotate the blade. So it doesn't matter which way I hold this, because the cutting edge is there. So I'm just going to tighten that up there. As it starts to get there, I can finish it off. So this one works in exactly the same way as a chisel, which is why it's called a chisel blade. And if I want to, for example, if I want to cut across there, I can just push that down. But it works better with softer materials. And you see I'm rocking it rather than pushing down, because you can see if I push down too hard on that, that's quite a flexible blade, so it's likely to snap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wiggle that like so, and that's going to cut that through. But as I say, you don't want to do this for hard materials, so rocking side to side until I cut that out. So it's very handy for this, for example, where I've got, I'll use a smaller blade for this. Obviously use a size of blade that works best for your piece of work, but I'm going to try and cut this bit out, and that's actually really nice. So if we want to cut this out, you'll notice that there's little sprue points there. So we have one there. We're going to place that in there. We'll rock it side to side, and let's see how easy that comes out. Ever so simple. I'll do that one more time because we've got another piece there. So we look for our sprue points there, and the camera's not focusing there, is it? So we have a sprue point there and a sprue point there, and what we do is we very carefully line it up, and then we push it into there, little rock side to side, and see how easy that was. It was no effort at all. I personally think if you're pushing a lot of effort on your knife, there is something wrong. Either you've got the wrong blade, you're cutting too big a piece, or you've got the wrong type of blade, or your blade is blunt, as you saw earlier on with this. So you've seen how I do a knife blade change on these. These are slightly different. Another reason why I buy these, this actually comes from Swan Morton. This is designed for the medical trade. So this is either, I mean, you wouldn't use this particular knife in the surgeon trade because you couldn't clean it hygienically. But these blades, these are used for actual operations. So if you ever go and have your appendix cut, you could be using the exact same blade I do. So these blades come in packs of 5, but I buy them in boxes of about 100, and they work out about 20 pence a box. So what I do is I'll get the new blade ready, and there it is. Look, so dangerous, it has to have its own packaging. Now I use a pair of pliers on these, and what I do is I push this out as far as it will go. I turn the knife downwards so that I've got this little piece there exposed. What I'll do is with my pliers I'll bend it slightly at the back, and then I can push forwards. Can you see that the reason I'm working from behind, let me do that again for you. Right, so it's clipped in, you've got this little bar there. So you see I've got the knife pointing away from me, so any slips I'm going to go that way. If I work this way, what do you think is going to happen if I slipped? So hold the blade. Can you see I've got it from this side? And I'm gonna lift that up so it's higher than that little bar. It's very hard to work upside down, but you see I've got that lifted as far as the higher than the bar, and then I'm going to push it forwards and it comes away, and then I then get this blade and I hold it that way so that the cutting edge is away from my fingers. Okay, and then I'm going to push that into the bar, and I'm going to gently push that in until it clips in, and there we have a brand new blade. And now I'm going to have to test it. Okay, good, that is. So again, testing my theory about pushing. Look, even with a brand new fresh blade, if I push, it just rips it. Whereas if I cut with a bit more of a sawing action, look at that beautiful smooth cut. So that's using the blade and changing the blades. Now there's one more blade to show you, which unfortunately I don't own, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of use your imagination. So there are lots and lots of different blades out there, but for my main usage these are the three that I use. So this is a third one. I've actually run out and not been able to get any. So this is actually a blade there, but what we're going to do for the purposes of this, we're going to pretend that the cutting edge is actually along the top, so we've got a curved blade. So ignore that bit, that's our curved blade. So I wouldn't be doing this with a real blade because I'd be cutting my finger. Now what that is extremely useful for is things like photo etch. You see here we've got little bits on this photo etch, and then when we want to cut them off, it's very hard. We can do it, but if you cut your photo edge like this, it's very difficult, and you could end up putting too much pressure. It's just far easier. This isn't going to cut, but what you do is you position. Imagine this is on a cutting mat, or better still, a hard surface like a tile. You place your blade down on the tip, and then what you do is you roll it over, and that will cut through the photo etch. I mean, it's not going to cut, but like that, and then that will cut the photo etch. It puts less pressure on the tip of the blade, and it just controls it more. What it also means you can get your knife much closer to your finger. When I'm cutting with this, I don't want my blade close to my fingers because I'm going to cut through them. So with this particular piece of photo etch, I might place my thumb down there to hold it, then I can come in with my blade, I can roll it, and it's not going to fly off everywhere, and I'll turn it around and like that. So that's basically the main thing about craft knives. So it's the way you put them in. So I'll do another recap. So which one is this? Right, so this is my number 11 blade on my Exacto knife. So what we're going to do is we're going to loosen this a bit. I loosen it as much as I can. We place the blade in between the two lines. Sorry, I've done that wrong. Cutting edge always away from you, and handle it as little as possible, and then we push that in as far down as it will go, and then we bring that collar up. Yeah, because look, if we hold the collar, it's rotating the blade. So we hold the blade with the cutting edge away from us, and we tighten that, and that is a nice, even though that is cheap muck, that's still a very usable blade. So so using this is far too thick. I would not recommend cutting through a sprue this big, but even with a cheap nasty Exacto knife, you can see I can still do the job. So next thing we're going to use the craft knife for, and I'm going to use my brand new blade, is cut and sprue parts. Now most of the time you're going to be doing sprues, so I thought let's do some. So we will still need our side cutters. Always use your side cutters. Now what I like to do when I'm cutting pieces off is I'll cut that sprue nub as far as away as I can, and the same there. It doesn't matter about the quality of the cut, and this one's obviously fallen. Okay, that's how not to cut pieces off. That's temporarily lost. Right, so we've cut our sprue and we've got these big massive nubs on the end. So what we'll do now is, now using our flat sides, we'll come in as close as we can. Yeah, now these are precision, but a lot of sprue cutters won't go really close, and some model makers actually like that. You see there we've got a little nub. So then we can come in with our craft knife, try to use the heel and then hold it in a position so that if you miss, and then what we'll do is, using that 45-degree angle, we can trim. Now what I like to do is I like to have it coming up a little bit, and then I can turn that round and then I can trim the rest off. And we're doing very gentle cuts. Remember that the thinner the piece that you're cutting, the easier the knife will do. Can you see, look, on my finger I've cut about 4 or 5 pieces off there. So gentle trimming, gentle trimming, and then what we'll do is we'll just finish that off with our sanding sticks or our sandpaper or whatever we want to use. And because we've trimmed that very close, and there we've got a nice little finish. So the question is there, guys, even though this is a video about craft knives, I've used 3 pieces of equipment to do that, and I've ended up with a very lovely job. Now which piece was most important? I don't know, but we used the 3 in conjunction with each other and we got a very nice finish. Maybe the craft knife is the least important. You know, we could have cut our sprue with the sprue cutters, gone in as close as we can, and then finished it off with the sandpaper and got a good result. And this has just made our job a little bit easier, because as you can see, look, to get that down, it's taken a bit of effort. Whereas if we had our knife, we can just trim, and it's done a lot of the work for us. I've gone in a bit too quick there, and I've used the top of the knife, but point made, I think. So there you go then, guys. So the recap really is, safety is first. I do a lot of this without thinking about it, because you do little things and they become habit forming. So to change this blade, it's point it away from you. I'm using tweezers. I've seen people, and I have got this off by hand before. There you go, look, I've just got it off by hand, but I really cannot recommend doing that, because it is very easy. Even the blunt blades, when I refer to this as blunt, I mean it's not sharp enough to do a really good job. Let me pop this blade back in. Now you saw the difference between the 2 blades when it came to cutting paper. As you can see from this, it's still very sharp. It's still sharp enough to cut fingers off, its toes, cut big holes in the back of your hand. Although I'm referring to that, see, it's making a bit of a mess of it, but as you can see, it's cutting through. If that was your finger, So yeah, safety is very, very important, and obviously dispose of these. But yeah, to recap, we're going to lift this blade up. I don't find it so easy this way, but I'm doing it this way to show you. And then we can push the blade away. Look, if I slip, it's going to go that way. And then to position the new blade on, holding the blade, the cutting edge away from you, because look, if I now slip, you see that's not cutting my finger, whereas if I held it this way and slipped, I'm not going to demonstrate, but I can assure you that will cut through my finger with the absolute of ease. And then you bring this, I'm going to have to do it wrong just to show you, but you're going to bring that little channel there, is going to go into there, and then it will click into place. This is actually a really bad handle. I've kind of wrecked. I was trying to clean it, and I've got bits of grit in there, so I am buying a new one. But this is the knife I personally recommend. I think it's a lovely knife. The only problem is it doesn't fit the fatter blades, which is why I do buy things like this. So I'll buy something like this for cutting wooden sprues, and but I've got a rounded one that will work well, so I'm buying 2 of these, and I'm going to repaint one. But yeah, so that's to change the blade on that one, and never ever pick it up with it further than that position. Try to get into the habit of when you cut with it, retract it, then put it down, because again, if you pick it up, you see, like, if that blade was out, that could easily fall out, cut into my hand. So I hope that's helped you with craft knives. 3 kinds of blades. You've got this angle blade, which is a general purpose. You've got this chisel type blade, which is for bit more precision work, just small bits. I haven't got any more bits to show you to cut. And remember, don't dig into it. Go in and give it a wiggle, and it just helps. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but I managed to make a small cut in that by wiggling it. Don't ever use the blade as I have just done there. That's what the handles are for. And then you've got these nice curved blades, which are very useful for photo etch. Okay guys, so yeah, I hope you found that useful. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up. I can really use it. It really does help the channel. Channel is growing, and I'm hoping to grow it so that I can help more people. So let's switch to front camera. Right, so yes, yeah, hope you found it useful, and I will catch you in another video. So take care guys, I'll see you next issue when I'll be doing paintbrushes.